Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching from around the world. Welcome to today's webinar, Generating Alpha through AI, Leveraging VMware Greenplum Generative AI Capabilities. Now, before I bring in our two very handsome guest speakers and hosts, I do want to just go over some housekeeping items. First, we'd love to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions, please submit them using the Ask the Questions tab below, and we'll do our best to answer all of your questions live. And in addition, we know that you guys are here to hear from us, but we love to hear from you. So if you have any feedback, let us know how we did, how we're doing, and what you'd like to hear at future events. Please use the Rate This tab also below the presentation screen. We do take a lot of your comments to heart as we plan out our webinar schedule within the next few months. So without further ado, let's bring in our hosts and our guest speakers. We have Martin and Ahmed. Hey guys, thank you guys for joining us.
Hey, nice to be here.
Hello.
All right, off to you guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, AJ.
Yes. So good evening again, everyone. With myself and Ahmed, we're in the VMware data team. So we're going to talk you through some of Greenplum's generative AI capabilities this evening. And yeah, ask questions anytime, get in contact with us. And do you want to say a few words about yourself, Ahmed, as well?
Yeah, so Ahmed Rashid Hazurli, based in Paris, data solution engineer in the data team. I work with Martin. And today we're going to talk about how Greenplum can help, let's say, financial institutions, hedge funds, asset managers through within their whole data journey. So to answer a lot of challenges they may have and address all and tackle all those challenges as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
So, Martin, do you want to introduce what's in the agenda today?
Yeah, let's have a look. So for this exercise, we've taken the financial banking industry, right, just to make it a little bit more realistic, types of challenges that people have in these industries. Clearly, a solution like Greenplum is applicable to many industries, but we're just taking these as an example. So we're going to start by introducing some of these challenges, how to tackle them. Then we'll see a few real use cases that we've prepared for you, and then yeah, wrap up at the end and hopefully have a bunch of questions from yourselves.
Great.
Okay, so let's get going with the challenges. So what kind of challenges? You've worked in the financial industry a lot, haven't you, Ahmed?
So I've actually started working in 2019 in a hedge fund called Aviva Investors as a data scientist at that time. So, and during my journey at Aviva, I've actually faced a lot of challenges in the data journey, actually. So first of all, we had a lot of data coming from many data feeds like Bloomberg APIs, FactSet, all those, let's say,
data aggregators,
financial data. Yeah.
Yep.
And it was very hard to, let's say, analyze those data, but also to analyze them on real-time basis because they keep arriving, and you need something, a data platform that is capable of handling those large amounts of data, but can also enable you to do that on real time. So we used to work with portfolio managers, with financial analysts, and it was very, let's say, challenging, right? Because first of all, we had like a lot of ETL jobs to do, a lot of engineering, data engineering, and the demands from PMs and financial analysts, they were really pushing
data
us.
now as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we had a lot of asks or needs, let's say, to analyze data, but also to analyze textual data, structured data, semi-structured data, and build a lot of dashboards. And for example, to analyze the stock market, to analyze the news, find correlations between those data. That's what we call alternative data, right?
And there's a whole bunch of documents as well, right? Like yeah, annual reports and all these kind of things that are quite tricky to automate. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So financial reports, PDFs, let's say, they were really hard to read, to parse, and to analyze, right? And today, I think we're gonna show how Greenplum can help the financial institutions answering all those questions.
For sure,
let's say.
For sure. All right.
But before that, I think, yeah, if we take a look at the challenges we've just seen, we have a lot of needs, right? And those needs, they might push those companies or financial institutions to choose a lot of tools, a lot of databases, just for a few, let's say, use cases, right?
Yeah, specific use cases, specific tools, right? Which is, I mean, it can be a solution, but then you end up with a great big landscape to maintain and look after. And yeah, usually those specific solutions cover, let's say, I don't know, 99, 100% of the functionality, but with other solutions, you may not need all that 100% of graph database functionality, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. If we take a look, for example, at the time series database, since we're in the financial industry, you have a lot of time series data, right? So those companies, they tend to go for specific databases. For time series, they go for relational databases. They might have a data lake in place, which is not very scalable. For the text search on PDFs, they might go for text search databases, right? And the goal today is actually to show how Greenplum will answer all those questions, but also how with one solution you can have a general purpose database or data warehouse.
Exactly. All right. So introducing Greenplum then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So myself and Ahmed, we've been working with Greenplum for a long time, and we have a bunch of customers that use this for lots of different use cases, right? Not just in the financial industry, but there's a few kind of key points that you need to be aware of with Greenplum that make it the solution of choice for these organizations, right? One is it's a scalable solution. You can scale from gigabytes to petabytes, and our customers do this as well. You have the streaming ingestion engine with all these different types of data as well, right? As we've seen in the financial industry, we've got lots of different data types, text, the relational, etc., news, etc., and so on. So a whole bunch of different data types it can deal with, and then it is well, for those of you not familiar with Greenplum, it is a Postgres base, so it makes it very easy to integrate in your organization in terms of skills, in terms of integration with other tools, and so on. And what's nice is what we'll see today as well is the data federation layer, right? We'll see that in some of our examples. And on the right-hand side, you want to cover this bit, Ahmed, around the data science and the usage piece? Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So as any data warehouse, Greenplum is here to answer, of course, the reporting, dashboarding, visualization needs. So it can be used like as a data warehouse by other BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, and so on. But what makes Greenplum very, let's say, interesting is actually the data science piece of it, right? So data scientists, they like to write Python, R. They like also to focus on training models, right? Rather than like handling all those.
Yeah, all the data plumbing pieces.
Yeah, and that takes actually 80% of their time, right? So how can we help them, let's say, to reduce that time, but focus on their main job actually, which is train models and make them the best and the most performant, right? And what makes so this in Greenplum, data scientists, they can write their Python, their R, and they can use any package they like. For example, TensorFlow, Keras, scikit-learn, or any other package or library. But they can also use the extensions we provide, like Madlib and PostgreSML.
Yeah, and the interesting piece is that a lot of these things can be done in cluster and in database as well, right? It's not just about pulling your data to your Jupyter notebook and doing everything there in a data frame, right? That's one of the main things. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's very important because you're gonna leverage the MPP and distributed architecture of Greenplum, which is very nice. And we didn't mention the vector database capability of Greenplum. Can you enlighten us more?
Yeah, so okay, with unstructured data, clearly we can just store it as video, as or audio, as a byte array and things like that. But you're not going to really do much with that, and it's a bit of a waste of time usually storing these things in a database. But with PG Vector, we can deal with unstructured data in a much more compact way, in a much more sensible way that allows us to do similarity search, really, right? And things, use cases like that. So it's really, we'll see a bit of that later, taking your unstructured data and storing that as a vector representation, which obviously a database like Greenplum is really good at and very scalable at. So you can use many of these things. As you can see in the middle there, we have the parallel engine of Greenplum that has each of these parallel parts has PG Vector installed, right? So
Yeah, exactly. That's very unique, let's say. And if we zoom out, we can actually see Greenplum as a relational database, as a data warehouse, as a vector database, as you just mentioned, and also as a data lake, because now you can store your images inside Greenplum and they are ready to be queried, right?
Okay, that's one thing, right? The we did sort of briefly mention, I think, the federation layer there in the previous slide, but so you don't necessarily need to store all your data in Greenplum either if you don't. So storing data in Greenplum gives you access to that parallel performance, right? But we also have this federation layer, as you can see in the middle of the picture there, where we can reach out to other systems, whether they're storage solutions like S3 or Google Cloud Storage, relational databases. We can just access these external databases and storage platforms as a, let's say, table in Greenplum, right? Which is brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. And in two modes, in read mode, but also in write mode. And that's very, very powerful utility. And yes, just to continue, so we've seen all those capabilities. We have also the spatial database capabilities because we natively support PostGIS, which is very modern, very advanced extension
Yeah,
of
it's
Postgres.
the biggest open source geospatial database out there, right? It's
Yeah,
yep.
exactly. We also support some extensions when it comes to graph analytics as well. And we can also see Greenplum as a data science platform. I just mentioned those data scientists, they can actually just connect to the database, write their own Python R or use our extensions, and they are ready to train, deploy, feature engineer their models actually. So that's pretty nice. We also have the time series, let's say, database capabilities because we can handle real-time data at large scale. We can actually stream from 5 to 10 million rows per second into Greenplum database. And we also have the text search capabilities.
Yeah, the text search is widely used by lots of our customers, again, in various security applications as well. But yeah, so just to mention to those you not familiar with Greenplum, we recently released Greenplum 7, which is the most advanced data platform out there. So we've been upgrading our Postgres version in Greenplum for the last few years, and that's brought in, aside from our let's say our text engine that lives next to Greenplum, we also have some more native capabilities within Greenplum itself. So very powerful text capabilities in there. Yep.
Yeah, which is based on Apache Solar, which is very, very nice. So yeah, and the goal today, actually, Martin, is just to show how we can help our customers or any Greenplum user actually from the BI, so traditional analytics, going through to generative AI and passing by the machine learning, deep learning, and NLP within the
Sure.
database.
Yeah, it's a lot of customers are kind of on the beginning of that final journey, right? On this graph, and yeah, it'd be good for them to see what they can do with Greenplum there as well.
Yeah, great. So that's for it for the introduction, right? And now we want to see more demos. We want to see how, in practice, how things are really, how we can actually use Greenplum for all those use cases. So from BI, so data analytics, that's very basic, but we'll see that in a moment. We also want to see how we can, for example, train machine learning or NLP models as well. And we want to also see how we can leverage the text search capabilities of Greenplum and also the vector database capabilities.
Use all those LLMs, right? That's everybody's very excited about.
Yeah, exactly. That's the final piece. That's very exciting.
Nice.
So
Cool.
we start with the stock prices data, right?
Yep.
That's very common data set that we find at our customers. And for this one, actually the goal is so we have a data set which is very basic. So we got some tickers and we got actually their stock prices at opening hour, closing hour, and we got also the volume of trading of that stock, right? So we find like stocks like Apple or the most popular stocks in the market. However, my data isn't in Greenplum now, right? It's on Postgres. Can you help me, Martin, getting that into Postgres, into Greenplum without writing a Python ETL, for example?
So this is kind of the federation layer we talked about earlier. You'll see the picture on the right-hand side there where you can see some examples of the different types of formats that you can use, the different types of databases, or different types of data storage options. But on the left-hand side, you'll see we're creating an external table, right? So the data doesn't actually live in Greenplum. The data remains in the original storage. In this case, that's, as you can see, it's a Postgres database with server equals Postgres. It is a writable one. And so with this way, we can just run a query against this external table, right? And we don't have to ETL the data from many different sources into one location. We can actually access this data from all these options.
Yeah, so just select on that external database. It can actually give us some data and we can start working on it, right?
Yep.
But then I want to actually do some data analytics, right? So I can spin up my Jupyter notebook and start doing some data analytics, right? So in this one, we have the candlestick chart.
Yep.
And you can see, for example, for the Apple stock, how the price changes within a day, right, over the time.
Yeah, so I have a question here. This is a SQL example, right? But we have different ways to interface as well to this data with Greenplum.
Yeah, of course. So Greenplum, as we said, is Postgres database. So we can actually connect to Greenplum using pandas, for example, to read, to execute a query and just retrieve the results. But we can also use our package, which is Greenplum Python, and start doing some data visualizations. Or what you can do, of course, you can use business BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, Metabase, etc., etc.
Okay, so how's this different from, let's say, reading my data into a data frame and after that working in the Jupyter notebook, right?
So in this one, actually, what happens actually, for example, is the goal here is actually we wanna push down all the calculations. They must happen on or be executed on the Greenplum server, right? And we just wanna retrieve the results, right? And to do that, what you can do, of course, you can write this query as it is inside your Python code. But you can also, as I said, like we have a Python package, which is Greenplum Python, that helps you write in the pandas-like code. And
right, so you don't need to know SQL, is what you mean? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice,
And that's pretty, let's say, though a data scientist usually like that style of coding, right? Because it looks very similar to pandas, and you don't really have to know SQL to do that, right?
Yeah. I've been doing SQL 20 years. Don't mind, but some people obviously different. Most data scientists grow up with Python, right? So they're very familiar with that. Yeah, for sure.
That's true.
All right.
And the second thing, actually, of course, we can start doing some very basic also data analytics. In here, we want to know the average volume of trading per year. So you can see the evolution of those trading volumes, right? And we can actually leverage the let's say, the analytical functions of Greenplum, right?
Yep.
That's very basic, but we can also go to the window functions. Can you explain more, Martin, about this?
Yeah, I mean, a common use case with financial data is obviously moving averages, right? So yeah, and these kind of functionalities are built in into Greenplum. We have a whole stack of window functions. Here are a couple of examples where we're doing the average close price over the preceding rows and the current rows. So it's really giving the users those tools that are out of the box, right? So
Yeah,
in Greenplum without having to write your own code or anything to do that. But this is just a simple example. There are many of these window functions available, and again, widely used for many different types of data.
great. And so yeah, Martin, do you have an idea about the advanced functions we can find in Greenplum? Can you tell us more about, like, do you have any extension that has those capabilities?
Oh, yeah, many extensions, right? What's interesting is that okay, we're doing SQL here. Some of our customers, they are very used to one specific way or they've built a whole bunch of calculations already, right? They've built them in Python, they built them in R, and so they want to reuse that functionality they built in their libraries. So that's really nice. That again, they don't have to rewrite everything in SQL to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Great. And for me, I have another option, which is
Okay.
Madlib, right?
Yeah, that is
Because
another
Madlib is very
yeah.
interesting extension, which is open source as well,
Hmm.
supported in within Postgres, but also Greenplum. And the good thing about Madlib that it leverages, of course, the distributed architecture of Greenplum, but it has a bunch of statistical functions built-in statistical functions, right? Very advanced ones.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's
Yeah,
say I
yeah,
have my data set, and I wanna actually, with simple SQL, I wanna generate a summary report for that table, right?
You, if you're starting off with a data set, you first got to find out what's in there, right, and
Yeah,
what it's made up of. So yeah, that
yeah,
seems like
exactly.
a really good use case. Yeah.
Exactly. So to do that, actually we have this madlib.summary
Mm.
function that will actually only in a simple way generate a summary report for us in this
Yeah.
stock prices summary table, right? And after that, what we can do as well. So in this is
Mm. The summary report. Yeah,
the
yeah,
way, yeah.
yeah.
So the summary report that we get in this table. So as you can see here, we have for every column, we can see how many distinct values we have, how many missing values, positive, negative, or zero values. And we can also know what's the mean, the median, the variance, the mean max
Minimax. Yeah,
values, right?
yeah.
We can
Nice.
also know the quartiles, first quartile, third quartile, etc., etc.
Very
This is
cool.
pretty
Yep.
nice
Nice. Yep.
because it's very simple to execute, but we can also, for example, generate
Mm.
a correlation matrix, right? Let's say
Okay.
we
Okay.
have
Yep.
our columns and we want to know what's the correlation between
Mm.
my opening date, my opening, let's say,
Opening price. Yeah. Yeah.
price and my
Mm.
closing price, right? And as we can see here, let's say, we can see that it's 99%, more
Mm.
than 99% correlated, right? So we can admit that opening price is very pretty much the same as the closing one, right? Which is
Yeah.
very,
Yeah.
very true, right?
Mm.
So this is, yeah,
Yeah, some great functions to really give you some insight into your data set, right? That's again um, power of extensions with Greenplum.
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
But we can also, for example, since we're in the financial stock prices, we want actually to forecast the future, right? And Madlib
Mm.
has such capabilities. Let's say I wanna forecast the Apple stock price within the next 10 days, right? Can Madlib help me in that?
Yeah, it has a whole bunch of built-in functionality. One of them is the ARIMA, the
Yeah,
training and forecasting module, right?
yeah, exactly. And how can we do that, Martin? Can you explain the SQL that we see on the left?
Okay, so yeah, first of all, at the left side, we're just collecting the Apple stock right from all the ones that we have. It's just really, I mean, yeah, you could create a table, you create a view, it doesn't really matter, but it's a nice way to separate out the Apple stock. And first of all, we're going to train that obviously on the close price, right? So we're using the Apple stock table as the input. And then we choose the date in the close price, and from there on we can use the prices output is where that result of the training goes into. And then we use that to write our forecasting into our forecast output table.
Exactly, that's great. And as we can see here, we can actually query that data and see how the forecast value is compared to a real value, for example. This one, we're seeing the forecast values for the 2020 for March, starting from the 19th of March 2020 up to 1st of April, right? And we can see that ARIMA is pretty much stable, right? It's sticking to the 247. But that's pretty nice, right? So we have built-in ARIMA models, which is using the parallel execution of Greenplum. But we can also think about handling real-time data, right?
Okay.
So let's say I have my financial API. I used to work when I used to work at Aviva. We actually had a lot of data feeds, right? And we wanted to be to do that, to handle that streaming data that is coming every second, right? And can you explain, Martin, how we can do that with Greenplum? How can I, for example, have my data stock prices, which is really coming to the database?
Yeah, so our first example is we already had that data in a separate database, Postgres or whatever, it doesn't really matter, but that when we can go and fetch that data from a different location. The other thing we can do is Greenplum has a built-in streaming server, which is really nice in that, you can give it a number of jobs to do. You can connect it up to a Kafka or some kind of transport, right? And that way you can have your data continuously updated and up to date in your Greenplum database. So once you've got that in place, then you've used. We've got some examples here with FactSet and so on, all those data providers. Once that plumbing is in place, you can then start, use your up-to-date data from Greenplum.
Great. So I have this Python code, which is actually collecting data from FinHub, which is a financial API, free one. And I'm writing this Python code and I'm publishing my real-time or streaming data into a Kafka topic, right? Which is called financial stocks. How can we listen to that from Greenplum?
Yeah, so this is, as we mentioned, the Greenplum streaming server. You just you submit a job, the job will listen, subscribe to the topic. There you go. That's the handy picture we made earlier. So you have a control server for streaming server that manages those jobs. You give it a job saying, listen to this topic, put the results into this table, and so on. And then once the job is running, it will continuously read from the topic, put the data in Greenplum. Greenplum does its parallel processing on the insert side, on the query side, and so you kind of have real-time ingestion. So that's we see Kafka. What about RabbitMQ? Do we see that a lot these days? Or?
Yeah, so RabbitMQ, since it has now the streaming capabilities, we actually can leverage that as well, right? So instead of working with queues, you can now just leverage the RabbitMQ streams, which is pretty similar to Kafka, right?
Right. So you're saying we can exchange Kafka and RabbitMQ with streaming server as the transport, right? Yeah. Nice.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And to do so, actually, we have this YAML file, right? So as we know, most of the REST APIs, you just receive a JSON type. And the good thing is that actually Greenplum supports JSON types, right? Natively.
So you mean on the input side there in the job?
Yeah, exactly. But also on the output side. But since we receive a JSON, we actually want to just pull that into a table, which is our daily
format.
Exactly, which is our daily stock prices, right? So we have the Greenplum, the internal Greenplum table, and now we have the real-time data that is coming continuously coming into our Greenplum table, and after that we just need to submit that job and start it, and then it will just continuously get the data from Kafka or RabbitMQ, right?
Cool. When you say continuously, does that mean record by record, or how does that work?
Well, it can be record by record, but Greenplum is also intelligent. It can create some batches, right, of data. For example, for every 1 second, it will batch those incoming data and just
is that the
push
minimum
that.
interval you've got on the
Exactly.
data? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Exactly.
Cool. Yep. All
That's
right.
great.
Nice.
And
Sorry. One thing. What about if you want to change any of that data on the way in? Is that the transformations that's mentioned there?
Yeah. So in here, actually, we're doing implicitly a transformation, right? We're taking a JSON and we're converting that into a structured table, right? But you can also do some, let's say, advanced transformations. You can, for example, write a Python code that transforms your data into an output. Let's say you have real-time news, and you want to actually for every news we receive from Kafka RabbitMQ, you actually want to do some sentiment analysis, right? Well, you can write your Python code, or you can use Madlib or PostgreSQL to take that input, that news feed, and just calculate the sentiment score for that one, for example. So you can do that on the fly transformations with Greenplum, right?
Cool.
We just didn't mention that Greenplum is fully geared, let's say, also with a lot of capabilities, right? We have some data distribution, of course, because we have the shared nothing
parallel
architecture.
system. Yeah.
We have also partitioning. Can you explain it briefly, Martin?
Yeah, so partitioning is another method that's often used in data warehousing, really, to split your data up even in smaller pieces, right? Because with data warehouses like Greenplum, and we're usually dealing with big data sets, right? And you don't want to be reading all the data every time you execute a query. If someone asks for a specific month of data, then if you can just read that single month, you're going to save so much in I/O and processing. That's makes it much more efficient. The other nice thing about partitioning actually is that you can also have external partitions, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you can point your partition to S3 or Postgres or MySQL database if you want, right? And just query it when needed. That's the goal of partitioning. We have also the compression, but most importantly, we can actually have row-oriented tables as a traditional, let's say, database, or we can have a columnar-oriented table, right? And that's what we usually see with data warehouses.
What is the benefit of columnar?
The benefit actually is that it's pretty good for analytical queries where we only select few columns that we aggregate on, and you reduce a lot of I/O, of course, and you get the best performance ever.
Okay, I think there's also isn't there also an advantage in compressing if you're storing stuff in a columnar format?
Yeah, of course.
You get better compression rates, right?
Yeah, that's a nice spot.
All right.
But we've actually managed stock prices, and now we actually want to manage another sort of or type of data, which is financial news or financial text, right? And we want to, let's say, see in action how Greenplum can help us to do some text search, can help us to train NLP models, or use pre-trained ones, right?
Yeah.
So for this one, we are actually having our data coming from S3. As we can see here, we have this external table called S3 analyst ratings, and we actually putting that into our Greenplum internal table, right? With a simple insert into and selecting from that external table. So there's no ETL need here, just simple SQL. And once we have that data, we can actually explore it. So as you can see here, we have the stock or the ticker. We have the date of that news, which publisher is it, or who's the publisher. And we got also the headline, right?
Nice.
Ready to go. And the first thing we want to actually do is full text search.
Okay.
We want to be able to go and look for specific keywords or some regular expressions within our text data. So can you explain this to me, Martin?
Yeah, sure. So again, this is a built-in functionality of Greenplum, Greenplum 7 specifically, with the latest Postgres functionality on that. But it's really taking the text data and then turning that into a text vector, right? So that's what the two tiers vector is. You have language support there as well, right? So you can see English, but there's many different languages you could use. And in this case, also, we're then storing that result of that text vector in the same table as well, right? To make it easier to access it later. You don't necessarily have to do that, right? I think store in an extra column, but and then secondly, to make the fast access, we have create an index on there, right? That's again Postgres Greenplum. They both have a very wide variety of indexes. But that really gives you that fast result, even on super large data sets, right?
Great. So let's say I want to look for a specific, let's say, a regular expression where I'm looking for financial news that mentions the word bull, and it's that word is actually at most far like 10 words far from the market word, right?
Yeah.
This means that the market
Yeah.
is pretty bullish, let's say.
And you've got the two tiers vector here again, right? So that's doing it kind of on the fly rather than using that stored column. There's just multiple ways of doing it. You don't necessarily have to store that data. Yeah.
Great. And we can see the result that we get here, where we have the bull market ahead phrase, which is pretty much matching the our query, right? But we can also do some more advanced text search queries. Can you explain what's so right?
If you have multiple results, right, you want to see which one is more interesting than another. And this is where ranking can be done. So again, this is functionality that you see the TS rank CD there. It's a function implemented in the full text search to give you let's say a score for how well does that query match that textual query match the actual headline in this case. Yeah.
Great. And since we have financial news, we actually want to, let's say, measure the sentiment of our news, but also because the goal here is actually to see the correlation between the sentiment scores we get and the market movements that will happen, let's say, in the next hour, in the next day, or 3 days, for example.
Okay.
So can you tell me how I can do that?
Well, there's a number of different ones, right? One of them is, as we already mentioned at the start, Greenplum is very good at bringing in other functionality from other libraries, right? So here we have a Python function. It could be, in R again, the statistical language. You have a whole bunch of these functionalities that you can use. But so here, what we're doing is really creating a database function that's using a Python package, which we're called Fader in this case, right? Doing some sentiment analysis on that. So yeah, are there any other ways to do sentiment analysis?
Yeah, so this is the Python way, right? But to be honest with you, Martin, I don't like the Vader model. I want something more modern or more, let's say, sophisticated, right? Because I'm actually thinking about Hugging Face transformers, and I have my models, right?
Sorry, it was the result from the previous one, right? I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So we can see that the score can be like it can start from 0 to 1. And so I actually want to use some NLP transformer models,
How
right?
do we
Like BERT.
How do we do this? Is that something you got to do in a notebook, or
Well, not really. You can do
Okay.
it in the Python in the same way you've mentioned. So
Yeah.
you've shown us
Okay.
with Python, but let's say that we want to actually avoid all this Python code. We just want to use something simple SQL to load those NLP models for us and just start using them, right, to predict the sentiment of those news. And to do so, I want here to use my model. So I have some models on Hugging Face, and I want just to
Aha.
use that financial sentiment analysis model, right? Which is BERT-based. That's pretty nice, and it has, I
Mm.
think, mostly 50,000 downloads last month. So
Okay.
I think
So
people like it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So can you explain what's happening here then when you
Yeah,
do the select statement?
exactly. So in here we have this pgml.transform function, which is
Mm.
Postgres ML function that will actually take the model, download it from Hugging Face, and deploy it inside Greenplum, right, at a parallel way. So when
Nice.
I'm predicting here, I'm predicting just a simple sentence saying in the third quarter, the
Mhm.
net sales increased. So that's pretty positive news, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm happy with my model. And let's say I want to use it for the financial news table that uh, we've just seen, right? So
Okay.
to do
So
so,
with this single SQL statement, you're just pulling down that model from Hugging Face, is that right?
exactly. So I'm
Cool.
downloaded
Yeah.
it,
Yep.
and it's being deployed inside Greenplum, and it's
Nice.
also ready to use, right? There's no complex Python code to
Mm.
write, just simple SQL
It
function.
does look a bit easier than the Python way. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
let's. And here, for example, let's say we want to apply that on our headline column. And to do so, we just need to call the same function and say that our input is the headline column, and we can
Yeah.
see the predicted sentiment on the right side.
Nice. Nice.
That's good, but we want to actually also go further, and let's say that I want to recognize the person names within news, but
Right.
also the dates, locations as well, because that's pretty interesting insights we can get, for example.
Yeah, I guess news is yeah, a bunch of text, right? And
Yeah.
how do you make sense of that? Yeah, long string of words
Mm,
for what you're trying to do with your
yeah.
financial application. Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense. So how would you do that then?
For that, actually, we can just use the same function, right? We have
Okay.
pgml.transform, and we can actually just take the model that we find performant from Hugging Face,
Mm.
and this one we're doing name it entity recognition, right? So we just can go to Hugging Face, pick up the model name,
Yep.
and just start to use it on our financial news, right? In
Mm.
this example, I can see that Apple is an organization or a company.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Nice.
what that was successfully predicted by our model.
Mm.
I can see that also I have China, which is a location, right? So that's a country pretty nice. And I can see that iPhone is pretty interesting term, right?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's yeah. Out of all those words, you can then really correlate that
Yeah,
to a location and to Apple, right? Which is nice.
great. So
Cool.
we have seen ARIMA, we've seen also NLP models.
Mm.
What about the unsupervised models, right? We all know the clustering, the k-means. Can you maybe, Martin, explain for us how we can leverage those models, for example, to
Yeah. Well, as you may not know, Greenplum is quite a few years old, and with the whole rise of machine learning, MATLAB was born,
yeah,
which is one way of yeah, training your models in Greenplum, right?
yeah,
Um, but we
exactly.
also have the option to do that with PGML, I guess. Is that
Exactly.
right?
And
Okay.
for this use case, actually,
Mm.
we found that it would be interesting, for example, for a portfolio manager to diversify his portfolio, right? Instead of
Yeah.
investing, let's say, a $1 million in Apple, why
Mm.
not diversifying to reduce the risk and increase the diversification index, which is a
Cool.
pretty important metric in the financial industry, right?
Oh,
And to do so, as you said, yeah, so the goal here is actually to take some stocks and create
mm.
some clusters, right? That's what clustering means. Take
Yeah, I guess
some.
it's
Mhm.
like you don't want to invest in all insurance companies or and stuff like that, right? You want to, yeah.
ex-
Okay. Right.
Exactly. So I can
Nice.
take, for example, some data that we have here. So we have
Hmm.
the open, the so the variance and all those, let's say, quant columns or quant values, and we want to actually cluster them or create some subgroups of tickers or financial stocks to help those investors to diversify their strategy. And to do so, we have two options, right? As you said, you have the Madlib one. If you can explain it for us, Martin.
Yeah, so similar to the previous example, or similar. Its previous example was one example of one of the built-in Madlib functionalities. In this case, this is a k-means functionality that Madlib will do for you. Stocks data is your input data. The column that we're interested in of clustering, right? The number of centroids, right? So you can clearly, this is a bit of a, it's not an exact science, right? You're going to have to play around with this a bit to get the result that you want to. But if you're going to say one centroid, there's not going to be much use. But there's only 3 or 5 or something like that. It's a good number.
Great.
Yeah.
And I think we got some interesting results here. As you can see here, the second cluster is actually giving us some pretty nice, let's say, tickers within the same group. So you can see Apple, Nvidia align into it, which are big technology companies, right? So that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And if we can jump now to the hard part, right? What about unstructured data? What about images? What about videos? What about also PDFs, right? How can Greenplum relate to those kind of data? If you can explain.
So again, we alluded to that a little bit at the start, but it's really taking your original data source, whether it's an audio file, a PDF, or a video, using a model of your choice to create the embedding out of that. Embedding can be stored in Greenplum, so you essentially end up with a database full of vector representations of these different original unstructured data sets. So every PDF becomes one embedding with whichever model you choose to use for that. That obviously, that part is where you're going to spend most of your time as a data scientist, right? To work out which model you're going to use, and then after you've stored in Greenplum, what would you do next, right?
So we can do what we call semantic search or vector search, right? So in this case, I would like, for example, to compare an image to a text. I know that there are some models interesting that can enable us to do. But if we stay on the same data set, I can actually find some similar news to the acquisition topic that I would like for here. So what we can do, just use the same model I've used before for sentiment analysis. And I'm actually transforming my acquisition sentence into a vector and doing
with
this
the embed function,
search.
right? Yep. Cool.
And in here we can see that it's pretty nice because I can see the last news, which is saying that a merger between UPM and Finnish Swedish company is not likely either, right? So we did mention the merger word, but it's pretty. The merger, this news is pretty similar to our query, right? Which is acquisition.
Yes. So this is not something that you would very easily do with a normal text search engine, right? You would have to write all the similar words that you would want to compare to get the results.
Yeah.
But in this case, we just mentioned acquisition, right? And we got merger instead because it's got the same meaning. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
So Martin, we have these vector database capabilities. So how can Greenplum, for example, help me to, let's say, collect my PDF data, my images, and start doing some nice, let's say, use cases like question answering, text generation, summarization of PDF, or even take some actions by developing those AI agents?
Yeah. Well, so we've seen some of these use cases quite a bit nowadays, right? And the nice thing is that we can bring all this to Greenplum. So I don't know if you want to spend a few words on OpenAI, right? How that model would work, but it's we're doing it differently, right? Do you want to explain the difference between those two approaches?
So what's interesting here is that you can leverage those LLM or large language models
Mm.
to make them, which are actually general purpose ones, right? But we want to
Yep.
actually make them understand financial industry or our own and private data, right? And what we can do is to develop those retrieval augmented generation systems.
Mhm.
And to do that, you actually need this vector store or this vector database. And that's where Greenplum becomes very interesting. This means I can take any raw file I have, like a PDF or any
Mm.
database and API, and I can just pass that as prompt to my LLM
Yeah,
in order
so
to
rather than
analyze.
retraining with on your own data, right? You're using the input data as a
Yeah,
prompt. Nice,
exactly.
very nice.
And as we
Okay,
can
cool.
see here, we have this Apple financial report of 2023, right? And I
Hmm.
have a question here. I'm saying, can you find the key events from these financial reports, right?
Oh, that looks
And
pretty handy. Yeah,
yeah,
nice.
and this RAG system is actually giving me some really nice answers saying that Apple has many new products, new services, and new software offerings, right? So instead of having like spending the whole day reading this PDF, you can just leverage large language models and Greenplum to do yeah to answer such questions in within few seconds actually.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah.
And that works. Let's say this is the way it works. Can you just explain it briefly, Martin?
Yeah, sure. So we start with the find me the event of the financial report. That's your prompt, right?
Yep.
And you can see on the it's a little bit small.
Yeah.
If you can see it properly, then you can see it's generating a whole bunch of subqueries, right, to get and then summarizing the results of those in a summary. So that's
Yep.
yeah, a very nice way to yeah, deal with those large reports that yeah, otherwise you'd have to do a bunch of text searches on, or you would have to read them. But in this way, we can just have a nice summary that is generated for you, right, to give you the
Yep.
key points.
Exactly. And
Mm.
what's interesting here also is that it has it finds that fiscal year highlights it's pretty much like a key event, right, for
Mm.
us. So that's pretty interesting. So our data challenge is solved, Martin, with the Greenplum.
I think so. I think we covered a whole bunch of yeah, from data acquisition to let's say seeing what's in your data, right? Getting those details,
Yep.
and then on to the different ways to analyze it, right? That
Yep.
we've seen.
Exactly. So like Madlib, as we can see
Mm.
here, or even PostgreSML, which is very pretty much actually replacing a lot of tools and a lot of databases, right?
Yeah,
With
this is
just
a really
one
nice
database.
one. That yeah, the left hand side I think is yeah, all the manual
Mm,
steps you'd have to do, right?
exactly.
And the right end with PostgreSML is all packaged into one extension which you can use for Greenplum, which
Yeah,
is
exactly. And you can have
very
the
nice.
whole MLOps cycle just inside your database without without the need to
Mm.
move your data from one source to another and having those network issues, right? And yeah, can you, Martin, just like explain?
Yeah, so I think we've seen this in some of our examples. Is really that where it's not just a vector database, right? It's not
Mm,
just a geospatial database. It's not just a relational database. You can use all these different types of use cases and combine them in one platform. Right? I think that's the
mm,
biggest, for me, the biggest power that you can see in Greenplum. Actually, well, for our customers, well, to be honest, right? It's, yeah. Anything
exactly.
you want to add to that one?
Yeah, just I think it's pretty nice to see that with one solution you can answer pretty much
Mm.
any need. So whether it's real-time data, data federation, geospatial data, and especially like the data science piece of it, which is pretty much interesting.
Hmm.
I I invite everyone, let's say, to ask any questions before wrapping up.
Ah,
And
nice.
yeah, so yeah, today actually, Martin, we've just seen that
Mm.
Greenplum can be the right data platform for any need, right? Going from the BI to AI, and now generative AI.
Yeah,
just
for
have
sure.
been
There's so much tech out there, right? For many different different use cases and different solutions. But if you can do it as one, then that saves a lot of headaches, right?
great. Thank you very much, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed. Yeah, and thank you, people, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Martin, for today's webinar. We do have a question here regarding how can
Okay.
folks reach out to you guys? I see that you guys have your email addresses
Yep.
on the screen, but is there also a link or a page where folks can talk to ask questions about the VMware Autonomous Data Services products?
Yeah, of course. We have our website, as you can see here in this slide. You can just reach out to us directly or even like contact us via the website. So yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, and you'll find all the we covered Greenplum from a few use cases, but you'll see all the detail on what Greenplum can do for you on there as well as some of our other data solutions, right?
Yep.
Within VMware, we cover data from any aspect, right? Whether it's messaging, in memory, big data, transactional. Yeah, we have solutions for all of these.
Thank you both. I know that we've hosted in the last year several Greenplum, several data services webinars. So we'll make sure to include the links to those recordings as we send out the post-event report for this as well to the folks that have registered and attended. And I do want to just give a special thank you again to Martin and Ahmed for today's presentation. I know it's late where you guys are at, so hopefully this wraps up your day and you guys can have some food after this. So thank you guys both.
Thank you,
Pleasure.
Thank you, Thank you, Martin.
All right.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a great week, everybody. Happy holidays here in the U.S. in the next few weeks and overseas in the next few months. So we take care. Have a great one. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.